Hey bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm. I just want to do a really quick September wrap up for you guys. The very first book I read this month was Rook by Sharon. This was supposed to be the Perustopia book for August, but the live show got moved to September, so I read this book end of August, beginning of September. If you don't know, Perustopia Book Club is run by Reagan from Peruse Projects and Sasha from Book Utopia. There's a Goodreads group, which I can link down below. When they picked Rook and talked about the synopsis, it sounded really interesting to me, and so I picked it up. This is a retelling of the Scarlet Pimpernel. This book is set in the future in our world, but in a regressed society, and like the Scarlet Pimpernel, there's this renegade who's helping these peasants escape from prison. I really like the part about it being in a regressed society in the future, and I found that to be really interesting. The pacing was a little bit weird for me, but it might have been because I took a trip in the middle of reading this book and my reading experience was a little bit disjointed. Overall, I enjoyed it, but there are definitely things that I still had problems with. I do have a review filmed for this book, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna post it. If you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts about it, let me know down in the comments, and then I'll definitely post the review that I already filmed but have not edited. I gave Rook 3.5 stars. Then the next book that I read this month is The Knife of Never Letting Go. This is by Patrick Ness. This was my very first Patrick Ness book, and oh my god, he is amazing. So this book is science fiction, and it's set on another planet. The main character's name is Todd. He lives in a town full of men, and in this town, everybody can hear each other's thoughts. There is no privacy. Anything you think, it's just out there in the world, and everybody else can hear it. And there are no women in this town. The book is written in vernacular, and it's also a very stream of consciousness type of writing that typically, it's really hard for me to like that type of writing, but once I got used to the way these people talk and the way the writing style was, I really enjoyed it. I was just on the edge of my seat the whole time, wanting to know what was going to happen next. And Patrick Ness, man, he evoked so many emotions out of me in this novel. So that's all I'm going to tell you about this book. I went into the book fairly blind, and I'm really glad I did because I really loved all the surprises it had for me. So overall, I absolutely love this book. It is probably my favorite book of the month. So I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. The ending was a super cliffhanger. Right after I finished reading The Knife of Never Letting Go, I went to the library to get the next book, which is called The Ask and the Answer. I hadn't planned on reading the next one right afterwards. I just was dying to know what happened. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about this book since it's the second book in the series. So in this book, Todd's adventure continues. There's a lot of action, and I found a lot of the ideas and things that were happening to be very thought-provoking and in very unexpected ways. This book didn't quite get me in the feels as much as The Knife of Never Letting Go, so I gave it 4.5 stars, but it was still pretty near to perfection. I loved every second of this book. So after I finished The Ask and the Answer, it was time to start reading for Slay That series, which is a readathon that Sarah without an H and Chammy from Read Like Wildfire are putting on. And since I was in the middle of the series already, my first series that I wanted to read for the Slay That series readathon was the Chaos Walking trilogy. That's the name of this series, is Chaos Walking. So the next thing that I read this month was a novella from this series. It's actually the prequel novella, so it's like 0.5. It gives you a little bit of a backstory to one of the main characters in the series. I gave the novella 4 stars. Then after that, I read another novella, which is 2.5 in the series. This novella is called The Wide, Wide Sea. This was my favorite novella out of the series. There's 3 of them. I love this novella so much. There's a romance in it that I loved. I cried at the end of this novella, and that's amazing. It's so short, but I was still so invested in these characters. I honestly wish there was more to the story. I wish it wasn't just a novella, because I want to know more about these characters and I want to know what happened to them, but I only got those 50 pages. So I gave The Wide, Wide Sea 5 stars. And then the next book that I read, following along with my Slay That series TBR, was Monsters of Men. This is the 3rd and last book of the Chaos Walking trilogy. This book has a really good villain in it, so if you're one of those readers who loves to read well-written villains, you should read this series. You don't really get to know him that well until this last book, but he's amazing. This ending had me in tears and so many emotions going through me. I loved this series so much, and I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It's a really close call between this one and The Knife of Never Letting Go as being my favorite book of the month / my favorite book of of the series. But I think The Knife of Never Letting Go is probably my favorite just because it's the beginning of the series. Even though it's the last book in the series, it does end on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and luckily there is a novella that comes after it, which is called Snowscape. So that's number 3.5. While I found the story of Snowscape to be really interesting, I was a little distracted because I was thinking about the ending of Monsters of Men, and I needed more resolution. I needed closure. I didn't get that until the end of Snowscape. One thing I did enjoy was the additional world building that was going on. I just love this world that Patrick Ness has built, and I wish there was more to this series because it's so good. I gave Snowscape 4 stars just because I was really distracted while I was reading it. Those are all the books that I finished in September. I actually read Snowscape on October 1st, but because it's the end of the series, I included it in my wrap-up. And like I said, I'm participating in Slay That series, and it is still going on. It ends today. So the last book that I've been reading during this last part of that readathon is Never Fade by Alexandra Bracken. This is the second book in the Darkest Minds trilogy, and I'd originally planned on reading this series for Slay That series because I wanted to read the second and third books, but then I got distracted by Chaos Walking. I'm only a little over 100 pages into it right now, but I'm loving it. So I definitely won't finish Never Fade before the readathon is over since it ends tonight. I've really enjoyed doing this readathon. I have so many series I need to read, so I definitely will do it again if they do it again. So these are all the books that I read in September. Well, minus Never Fade. I read that starting in October, but I just wanted to let you know what I was currently reading. Well, if you guys have read any of these books, let me know down below what you thought of them. If you haven't read any of these books, let me know what your favorite read of September was. That's all for now, so I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Hi guys, my name's Jade, and this is the very first video for my new booktube channel called Bedtime Bookworm. I discovered book blogs, and I just thought they were the greatest thing. There's this whole community of people who love books just as much as I do. I've always been a big fantasy and sci-fi reader, and I really like books that are about like adventures, and it's because I like to live vicariously through the book characters. Let's be friends!